everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and on today's video I am bringing you 12 recommendations of books that I have read this year for your 12 in 12 challenges for 2025. Around this time of year, a lot of people start to put up their 12 in 12 recommendations and ask people for recommendations, and then throughout the year they'll do them, so by the end they've got 12 recommendations from 12 friends. This can either be a list that you choose to do the entire 12 of and just go do all of them as recommended by me, or it can be watch through this and choose one to add to your own list. But these are 12 books or series that I have read this year that either I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about, or really did hit me in a profound way, or they've got a specific reason that I want to recommend them. If you are someone who enjoys reading about sort of nerds and geeks and nerdy geeky things like video games, card games, etc., and you also like a queer road trip romance, you might be interested in adding Conventionally Yours by Annabeth Albert to your TBRs. This was the first book that I read this year. I gave it 4 stars. I had a fantastic time. It follows 2 young men who are kind of antagonistic towards each other, more out of a misunderstanding of each other than an actual sort of like bully romance or anything like that. They are entered into a tournament for a card game that they like to play, and ultimately, where they were supposed to go on a road trip with 2 other people, they end up having to do the trip as just the 2 of them, which leads to, you know, heartfelt moments, big reveals about each other, opening up, letting down their guards, and ultimately falling in love. And it was just very wholesome, very sweet. And like I said, it's got different types of rep. We've got queer rep in here. There's also some neurodivergent rep in here. I will say trigger warning though for homophobia, so if that is something you prefer to not read, I would avoid it, because one of the characters in particular discusses the homophobia within his family quite a bit. So do please bear that in mind. But other than that, I do definitely think it is a fantastic book and was one that I was very glad to read earlier this year. If you are after a queer read but you are looking more adult but also sapphic and not too spicy, then I would recommend Not in the Plan by Dana Hawkins. This was a debut that released earlier this year and features Seattle as the backdrop of this story. We have a bakery owner and a novelist who each have kind of like anxieties and are hiding things from their friends and family, and they end up finding solace in each other. Only the novelist, when she first meets our bakery owner, uses her as inspiration for a character for her next novel. And so things start to get a bit complicated when feelings become involved and she starts to fall for her instead. And it starts this whole kind of mess, but I will say it was very well resolved and I did enjoy it, and I did feel like they handled it like grown-ups. And so yeah, even though there wasn't super heavy spice, I really did love the relationship and the romance, and I liked that where, you know, there was less sex, we had more time for them to actually build a romantic bond, and I just really appreciated that. So this is now a series where there's 2 books out, 1 coming out next year, and all of them follow characters that come up in these books, so definitely go check it out if you enjoy a queer debut romance. If you are looking for a non-fiction recommendation, I would suggest Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. She is a comedian from Scotland who also has autism and was diagnosed very late in life. So this is her talking through her experience of what it was like to grow up as undiagnosed autistic, and talks through very brutally and bluntly her experiences of what it's like with autism. She does not hold back the punches. She will tell you exactly how bad it can get as someone with autism, and she just isn't ashamed to tell you her experiences. It's very well written, it's backed up with facts, it's backed up with references, and as someone who was questioning her own autism a few months back, it really helped me to go, yeah, I am. So if you are looking for an insightful, yet also at times amusing non-fiction that looks at mental health and autism, definitely give that one a go. If you're looking for an Asian inspired fantasy, I would recommend Shanghai Immortal by A.Y. Chow. This is set in Shanghai, as it kind of suggests, only instead of in the mortal realm, we are in the realm of the immortals and death. And our main character, Lady Jing, has always wanted to go to the mortal world. Some events happen. She gets embroiled in a scheme where this pearl, dragon pearl, is being stolen from her guardian, and she has to go into the mortal world with a mortal human in order to retrieve it. And emotions happen and feelings, but we also do get some really interesting Asian lore, especially with Chinese dragons and the idea of death. There's also some very highly amusing moments with paper roosters, and that is all I'm going to say about that, but definitely one that I enjoyed. Some people really don't like Lady Jing as a character. I understood her, and I understood the fact that, you know, she may be 100 years old, but in the life of an immortal, that is nothing. And so yes, she does still have kind of a naive, childish outlook on life and reacts very naively and childishly. So even though this is technically an adult novel, it does read quite YA, so do bear that in mind. But as someone who actually really likes that kind of writing, I had a great time and I really enjoyed all of the characters and everything that happened, and I'm looking forward to the sequel. If you are looking for a sci-fi political is centered around a romantic relationship, you would enjoy Winter's Orbit by Evelina Maxwell. This is one that I read as part of my reading my friend's favourite books, and this was one of Chelsea Zhao's favourite books, and I did have a good time with this one. There were a few things that I had issues with, but I really enjoyed the romance in this. These two characters, Jinan and Kiem, are forced into a political marriage after Kiem's husband Tam dies, and basically they need someone from the royal family to marry Jinan to keep this forged alliance stable, and that's where Kiem is thrown into the mix. He's a little bit of a black sheep of the family. He likes to cause trouble and doesn't really care about politics, but through this marriage with Jinan, his eyes are open to not only how amazing Jinan is, but also to his own skills and abilities that he didn't think he had. And between the two of them, they also uncover some big secrets and big old moments that they then have to work together to try and overcome, along with some other members of the society around them. So definitely if you sort of like that political interplanetary sci-fi, even though they don't do a lot of planetary travel, it's focusing on like the dignitaries and the politics, I would absolutely recommend that one. If you still like sci-fi but you're less on the politics side of things and less on romance, but definitely like that sort of, again, interplanetary stuff with sort of almost this found family dynamic and focusing on robots and robotics, I would recommend the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. All Systems Red is the first book. We follow Murderbot, who is this, as the name suggests, Murderbot, who their job is to go with groups of scientists and basically be like the bodyguard and protector, and they kind of have no real self-thought or conscience of their own. Only this one learned how to hack into the mainframe of like their servers and has now developed its own identity and personality, and basically it had a bit of a bloody history and is now trying to make up for that. It ends up joining this team of scientists, and they uncover that there is some stuff going on, and basically where they were sent, they've been given false information that is intended to in fact make sure that they don't return. So they're now trying to figure out who is trying to kill them and why, while Murderbot is trying to keep the fact that it has sentience hidden, while also trying to protect them and realizing that maybe it does have some sort of human connections. And I just found it really great. I listened to the audiobook and I really liked how the narrator brought Murderbot's voice to life, especially like the kind of sort of chilled out sarcastic side, and it was a great time. Definitely one that I would recommend, and you do get a little bit of planetary stuff mixed in with that and some space travel. If you want fantasy and you like something that's got a bit of war, a bit of tension, a little bit more mature, definitely has got spicy scenes and is also borderline on the grimdark side, you may enjoy the Captive Prince trilogy by C.S. Pacat. I read the first one last year and the final two this year, and oh my god, mind blown. It does have some very upsetting and disturbing topics. If you're not good with uncomfortable situations that are sexual and non-consensual or involving younger people who are not of maturity, I would avoid this one. I still, despite all those things, it was still a fantastic series, and the main relationship between these two characters, going from this dynamic of captor and captive and like master sex, you know, sex slave kind of situation, to becoming partners and lovers and alliances. Whew, it was so good, and it took me on an emotional roller coaster I was not expecting. I also did not expect the actual political side of things and the war side of things to get me as well as it did, but it was so good, and it's a very solid series. It's become one of my all-time favorites, and like I said, the dynamics between these characters was so well written. It wasn't rushed, it was perfectly paced, and a lot of things were brought up that you didn't expect, and the character development was exquisite in this series. If that's not quite for you and you prefer something a little bit more sweet and cutesy and wholesome, and you prefer a more contemporary romance side rather than the fantasy romance, I can recommend Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. This features two older characters who are both almost 50. I think one is 50 and one's 49. And it follows their relationship as they go from thinking that one of them thinks the other is 21, one of them thinks the other is 80, and goes from that kind of dynamic to them realizing they're the same age, beginning to develop feelings for each other, and also playing a online RPG game that also helps with the friendship. And it was just so wholesome. There are discussions in here of demisexuality, so it's got some really good LGBT rep, and it's got LGBT rep that you don't always see, which, as someone who falls under that brand of asexuality, it was a good one for me, and it really helped me to understand some things. The relationships were sweet and wholesome, and even though I am not the same age as these characters, I did still feel like I could relate to them on many different things. And it was honestly one of the best romances I have ever read, let alone just this year. But if you prefer a more YA focused romance rather than adult, I would recommend Fake Dates and Mooncakes by Shirley. This is set in the backdrop of New York and takes place at a family restaurant where the main character, his mum passed away a while before the book starts, and he now wants to enter this mooncake competition but isn't really sure if it is something that he should do. And he's also questioning what he wants to do in the future, because in his mind it's set to do veterinary school, but he's also discovering a passion for cooking. Enter the other main character, who again, name has completely gone out of my head, but he comes from like very high society. He's got a very rich family. They basically come from absolute opposite worlds to each other, and it's basically a situation where the rich guy is like, hey, could you be my fake boyfriend for a little while? Only from pretty much day one you realize this isn't fake, they have genuine feelings for each other. They spend more time convincing people that the relationship was fake than they did in the fake relationship, and I find that so funny, and I just love their dynamic. There was a little bit of, okay, definite YA kind of everything resolved itself too easily at the end, but I did still have a great time. I gave it 5 stars, and if you can ignore some of the suspense of disbelief in there, it is such a good book. And there's a really cute corgi called Clover. She's so cute. If you are still looking for an adult contemporary romance, maybe one that's got not full-on spice, but definitely spicy enough, and it has a really good mix of family dynamics and relationships and people growing throughout the books, then I will recommend an author rather than one individual book, and that is Tara DeWitt. I discovered her books this year, and I read The Co-op and Rootbound, both of which were 4 and 4.5 stars, and both were fantastic, had really complex characters. They had really interesting storylines. Rootbound was focused on a family ranch, and it revolved our main character going back to the ranch after a number of years, where she has to sort of come to terms with some family stuff that she's never really confronted. She's reunited with her father and has to go through a lot of those complicated things, which I can relate to. And then she also starts to fall in love with one of the ranch hands, which complicates her feelings even more. As for the co-op, we've got a couple who, as teenagers, they kind of hooked up and had feelings for each other. He was the first person she ever said "I love you" to, only he didn't react in the best way when she said it, and as a result she's kind of felt that she's too damaged and has never really opened herself up again for romance. Enter years later, they have both lost their grandmothers, and the condo that they owned together, because they were in a relationship for a number of years, has now been left to both of them. Only the condo is in disrepair, and the only way that they can get a good amount of money for it is to restore it. But the only way that either of them can access that money is through her trust fund, which has the caveat that she must be married before she can access it. So what's the best thing to do? Enter a fake marriage, get the money, renovate the place, sell it off, split the money 50-50, have a quick divorce, no feelings involved, go on happily ever after in their individual lives. Simple, right? Right? It's such a good book, and I've really enjoyed both of her books, and I do have one on pre-order for next year. And then finally, if none of that is piquing your interest and you just want a graphic novel that will give you all the feels, has animals, has people interacting with animals, and is all about animal welfare, as well as the relationship that humans and animals have, I recommend the manga Dinosaur Sanctuary by Ataru Kinoshita. Ren owns the first 5 of these, and I read them all in one single day. They were so good. Every single one is 4.5 to 5 stars. Paleontology and dinosaur studies have changed so much about what we thought we knew in the past sort of 30 years. And even in the past 10 years, new discoveries have been made that have really influenced how we think about dinosaurs. And it's all reflected in this. It's got a slight sort of alternate Earth experience, because in this story, dinosaurs were found to have survived on this one tiny little island, and through those they have managed to genetically engineer and bring back dinosaurs from extinction. And so for a while there was a big dinosaur boom. There were loads of dinosaur zoos that opened up around the world. Only 15 years before this story starts, there was a fatal incident, and as a result, people very quickly turned their backs on it, and they decided actually we don't think it is a good thing, and many of the dinosaur sanctuaries and zoos have had to close down. Insert this one where we are following Enoshima Dino Land, that is a struggling zoo, and they've got a new zookeeper, Suzume Suma, who joins, and her infectious enthusiasm and her desire to bridge that gap between the dinosaurs and people again, and the public again, reignites a lot of things in all of the co-workers and all of the zookeepers, and she starts to forge special bonds with the dinosaurs as well as the zookeepers, and come up with different ways to try and help keep the zoo afloat, as well as get rid of the stigma surrounding the dinosaurs. It has got some surprisingly emotional moments in here. There's some stuff with the dinosaurs that I was in tears, some stuff with the people that I was in tears. All of the characters are fantastic, and I've just had the best time with this series. So that is my recommendation for 12 in 12. Let me know in the comments if any of these have inspired you to add them to your own challenges. And if not, then if you've got any recommendations for me for next year that you think I would enjoy, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out my Patreon, which is always linked below, and I will be returning to in January to catch up on everything that I've missed out in the last few months. I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.